Welcome back. Well, yes, indeed, that is what we'll be talking about for the most part today on Sunrise Daily. And yes, we've got those two gentlemen joining us this morning. Senator Yusuf, member of the 9th Assembly. He's a member of the APC. And Honorable Uzoma Kemabonta, also a member of the 9th Assembly in the House of Reps, former chairman, House Committee on Public Petition. He's a member of the PDP. Gentlemen, good morning. Thank you for joining us today.
Good morning. It's nice to be here.
Well, yesterday, the House of Reps resolved to set up an ad hoc committee to investigate the circumstances leading to the increment of the fuel price. Well, we don't know where that is headed or what will come out of that. But, Senator, let's start with you. I mean, many would have thought that, you know, your party has all this figured out. While the campaigns went on, they spoke a lot about how they were going to remove this. People expected them to hit the ground running. But now, yes, the subsidy is gone, and this is what we're grappling with right now, this huge challenge of handling this removal, the effects of the removal of fuel subsidy. So, as all of these things are playing out, was this the picture that you thought was going to play out?
Well, in fact, to be honest with you, I expected that to happen, what is happening today.
Which part now? No palliatives before subsidy removal?
The challenges that we are going to have after the election. I said it before, since last year. We said it that what is facing us is going to be very, very hard times. What we hadn't done so many years back, now we want to cumulatively remove it at this point in time. It will be very, very difficult and challenging. And I have always said, the fundamentals have to be attacked. We are not attacking the fundamentals. What are these fundamentals? So long as you do not find a way of controlling the fair value of your Naira, there is no way you will control subsidy, removal of subsidy. It will not work. These prices change as a result of what? Just because the Naira has depreciated. Firm and clear. So find a way of arresting the rapid depreciation of the Naira, then you'll begin to control some aspect, of the pricing of our products, even electricity and what have you. So I expected this to happen, to be honest.
But with this perspective of yours, many would expect that there are several other persons in your party who will have this idea, who are supposed to have taken it up there so that they can factor it in before going ahead with it. So what could have been the missing link? Is it that they refused to consider this?
No, remember, President Muhammad Buhari, former President Muhammad Buhari, wanted to remove the subsidy before the election. But he decided not to. If he had removed that subsidy before the election, APC would have lost the election.
But he had 8 years.
Well, he had 8 years. Yes, there are a lot of, challenges, a lot of constraints. And I've said this once, twice, again. We ought to have done these things so many years back. We ought to also find how are we going to address issue of our consumption of foreign goods, which eats into our reserves, which affects, the value of our currency. And so long as you do not have that fair value, every other thing that is dependent on the current value of the Naira will continue to depreciate. So, yes, we ought to have done this thing, as it were at that point in time. But you find that, policy, ability, will, politics, and what have you come into play. But, these things ought to have been done right from even SAP days, Structural Adjustment Program.
Honorable Abonta, yes, the APC is the ruling party. They are the ones who have removed the subsidy. Of course, people will address that concern with them being in power. But do you think the PDP has any basis to speak up or object to this? Because, I mean, if they had done what they were supposed to do in the first instance, maybe build a lot of refineries, we may not have been in this circumstance now.
Oh, well, my stance still remains that we do not need subsidy. It's a monster. It's depreciating Nigeria. It's eating up. It's a cabal thing. The removal of subsidy ought to have been done long time ago. So PDP, I do not think PDP are complaining about removal of subsidy. If they are, then that is wrong because
they are.
If they are, I will say they are wrong because during the time of Jonathan, attempts were made to remove subsidy, and the reason for removal were being canvassed then for whatever reason, like my distinguished senator said, sentiments, political considerations, lack of will. It was not that then. It will have been a thing of the past. So presently, I support and I canvass removal of subsidy, but there are more fundamental things to be addressed, not just subsidy.
What would they be?
For example, what do you need to do to cushion the effect of subsidy? Did they do what they call impact assessment of the resultant effect of removal? If that was done, then we wouldn't be well. I also agree with distinguished senator that the 8 years before Bath came in was a worthless. They had no focus, they had no planning, so they didn't do the needful. You till the soil before you plant.
But you know, the thing about this too is politicians, I mean, the views both of you have expressed at the moment, people would have thought, okay, if the parties hold all these views in terms of addressing the fundamentals, we won't be here. The thing is, it's still not, parties don't do it. PDP has been there for a long time, APC is there now for a long time. They still don't do these things. So it's frustrating for Nigerians when they see these things and they still, I mean, you expect that Nigerians will trust politicians to lead them aright. But clearly, it's not happening.
If history, memory is anything to go by, if you compare the 8 years of Jonathan or whatever and the 8 years of Buhari, you will see that Jonathan did the needful. I'll give you an example. Dollar remained at 160 throughout that period. What magic did Okonjo-Iweala do? He remained at that. And that is what is saying that the change in Naira, the depreciation in Naira is fast eroding whatever thing we've got to do. So presently, while supporting removal subsidy, I want to urge the present government to fast track how they can address the fundamental. When you talk about palliative that I'm saying now, palliative is just bogus. They must narrow it down. How will it work? And of course, I also believe that Parliament will do a lot to help. We must begin to talk about transportation, what kind of palliative, not the 8,000 palliatives.
Yeah, but does it make sense for the House to be telling us they are setting up an ad hoc committee to find out why they remove subsidy? Are they not in this country?
Fine. For me, I will say they should look at more serious matters, not just ad hoc committee. Well, like the Simpson canvassed here, what made the price to change within a few days? And we said now we've unbundled an MPs as it were, but we must begin to do more things. Now, who brings in the fuel now? Are we going to realize the license so that people can bring, are we going to license more refineries so that people can produce? If we see where fuel is being sold cheaper, I will go there. But now, the source is still one, and then the price is being increased. That is why Falana said, you don't have a right to determine what the price will be. You can't fix it. Let the forces of demand and supply, the market, apply. But here now, you are controlling the price without allowing the market forces to operate. You see, it becomes dangerous. It's like a fixed thing.
APC has said that they're not fixing any price, and market forces are determining it, and that they are just a player in the market. However, they are an important player. Now, we can debate that.
When you have a monopoly,
we can debate
what will be the outcome of a monopoly? You can't have the price fairness and so on. The monopoly determines what will be. Right now, the supply of fuel is monopolistic. It's not liberal.
Well, from what we see, some other companies have been licensed now to bring in this product. I think the very first company that was licensed has now their ship finally berthed at the Lagos port yesterday to some fanfare. So it does appear that that is about to change. Now, whether that would affect the price is uncertain, given what the fundamentals currently are. But then one needs to ask whether this policy was sufficiently communicated to Nigerians. Do you think that Nigerians understood the implications of the removal of fuel subsidy, especially when you look at some of the reactions that we've seen? That, for instance, the House says they want to investigate why the price of fuel has gone up. Do you think that there is sufficient understanding of the fact that, you know, people are now left at the mercy of the, of market forces?
In fact, if you ask me, I'll say there is zero understanding, because for the parliament trying to find out why the price went up. But the thing which provided the answer, now one of the answers, the depreciation of value of Naira. If international or whatever indices is being used, as Naira changes or declines, the rand will also go up. That is just simple economic arithmetic. Therefore, I should think that Nigerians ought to have been properly briefed, properly educated, so that they will understand what is subsidy, what is the removal, what's going to be effect, what are you going to do to cushion the effect. But all this we are not thinking. We got in the morning and we're told subsidy is gone. The next morning we're told this is the price. Few days after we're told this is the price. But in totality of all the shades of opinion, one thing should be clear: subsidy we do not need. But the how we go about it should be addressed radically, fundamentally, to cure the ills, to cushion the effect. And I should also think, where are we going to apply the money saved from this subsidy? It's also important. There must be a proper planning. There must be proper planning. They're not just saying we're going to give you 8,000 per family, a family of 7 or even 3. What's 8,000 going to do for them? But there are things you put on ground that will benefit the generality of persons and so on. And I also want to urge Labour and other people who are protesting to come out with ideas, to come out with reasons. If you say this is not good, say this is a better option. They should give the government an alternative plan, options. So we need to sit down at a round table and discuss it. Fighting, saying we are shutting down the system will not help us. It will throw more confusion. We must sit down and say within the next 21 days we're going to come out with a very reasonable consensus agreement that will suit everybody. That's what I should think. Let them call the experts to come. How did other clients survive? What did they do? Because if you look at it, if you do a comparative or superlative analysis, we will see that Nigerian fuel before then, we were merely subsidizing our neighboring countries. As we are crying now, our West Coast are also crying more than us. It's biting them. So what do? We need to take away political considerations and develop the will to go in and study what do we do so that this thing will come to an end and once and for all.
Well, I don't know. I've just been looking at it, and as my colleague pointed out, there's been, concern around the, not just the conversation around the removal of fuel subsidy, but, what should happen in the aftermath of that. One would have thought that, there would have been some work done. I know that there was plenty of conversation in the closing days of the Buhari regime around an $800 million loan, which they were taking from the World Bank. And because of all of the, I don't want to use the word malfeasance because it's not been proven, but let me say alleged malfeasance, because the amounts of money we were hearing leaving government coffers was mind-boggling as at that time, and people were wondering whether the $800 million was going to be a part of the money that was going to disappear without being properly accounted for. And as such, did not want the Buhari administration to be the one to administer that. But beyond that, one would have thought that there would have been a little more rigor around when this subsidy goes in June or July, as the case was supposed to be. What should happen thereafter? Looking at the level of hardship that Nigerians were going to face as a result of it, do you think that there was sufficient? Well, I think some people will say the answer is already in the question. Was there sufficient conversation? And do we really have the luxury of time right now to say that that's the kind of conversation that government wants to start having with citizens?
One day, the conversation was going on, but it was not going in the right direction. I mean, what sort of conversation that is going without involving the critical, aspect of running the economy? That is the issue. Who are they conversing with? National Assembly conversing with itself, executive conversing with itself. Is it the civil service? Is it the private sector? Is it the banking sector? I mean, people are all, going on out of the, everyone is doing his own thing. There is no coordination. So long as there is no coordination, there is no planning. That is why if you observe in the past, what government has been doing is to budget before planning. And we have always got it wrong. You are supposed to plan before you budget. But today, even then, people, budget before they plan. My own take on this, the immediate thing is to see how you are going to conserve or change the attitude of Nigerians dependent on foreign goods. It can be done immediately. And once you do that, just by increasing the tariffs on all luxuries, can we afford all these luxuries
but
that
they've
we
done
are
that
doing?
several times.
No, which tariffs have been done on luxuries?
Several luxury items.
Which luxuries?
Former Boris tenure. Champagne, several luxury items were taxed.
But it is not enough. It is not enough. The tariffs are not enough at all. You know, up till now, our marginal propensity to import is about 90 kobo.
No, but shouldn't we be talking about what are they doing to make sure refineries work? What are they doing to make sure power supply is uninterrupted?
I'm coming to that. I mean, how do you make, refineries? You import all these things to repair your refineries. And you import at what cost? So until you cost, you cut the cost of imports.
So while that is a fair idea that indeed there needs to be the encouragement of local production here, so as to save the value of our naira, and that Nigerians need to consume more of what we produce, and that goes to everybody really. But there's been questions as to what sacrifices government, public officials are also making, because they've asked Nigerians to tighten their belts as a result of the difficulties in the economy and the fact that the coffers are I don't want to use the word empty, but near empty. But people have been asking, what has government enlisted, and by government not just the federal government now, state governments as well, because we understand that as a result of this, more money is accruing to FAC. More states are going to have more money to spend. But there's been very short supply of information on what sacrifices government officials are making. Even if there's anything we're to go with, is the fact that it seems it's business as usual if we're to look at the list of approvals that have just been given by the National Assembly.
I have just spoken about attitude. Up till now, an average Nigerian, whether in government or outside government, believes that life goes life goes as usual. We have not been made to face this kind of challenge until now. We would have faced it since you are in the structural adjustment program, but it has not been done. You free the product market, that is, you liberalize the product market, you liberalize the financial market, and yet you did not liberalize the labor market. The labor has been stagnant. That is why it has become very, very unproductive labor that we have in this country. So long as these markets are not equilibrated, then you'll continue to have this kind of issues, in this economy. So yes, sacrifices have to be done, but what sort of sacrifice? You reduce the salaries of people, and then who are the people that are going to sacrifice? How many civil servants do you have? What is the salary of civil servants?
No, we should talk about public officers.
I'm not talking about...
I'm coming, public officers. Yes, okay, public officers. Let's talk about them.
Look at the convoys and the cars that they use all the time.
Fine.
There are companies that assemble vehicles in this country. How many of them are those politicians?
I agree. In the last few years, when we were considering the budget, we knocked against why do we have to use the SUVs imported into this country when Innoson is here. But it is attitude. And the attitude is all Nigerian attitude. It's not attitude of public servants.
No, but we have to look very critically at our public servants because they have been elected to lead. They are the leadership. So if they are not showing leadership by example, if my leader is still looking like everything he's wearing is imported, his car is imported, people aspire to look like their leaders. So if that is the situation, can any leader who is not using anything that is locally made, whose house is furnished with everything that is imported from it, ask the average Nigerian to, you have to use things that are made locally? Does that really make any sense?
I agree with you that we should look inwards, that we should also imbibe the attitude of using locally produced so that we use what we produce. I agree, totally. And that's where the sacrifice should come from. Since President Tinubu came on board, I've been observing him. I've been over the kind of dresses he wears. It's like he's using, made in Nigeria dresses. So there's impact from that.
How do you know that?
Well,
Are the fabric produced in Nigeria?
well, I should think so. I should think so. Are we not producing anything at all, fabric in this country?
Senator, you can tell me. I don't know.
So, yes, I feel guilty. I'm wearing almost 100%, foreign. But, the issue is our attitude must change. And how do you make our attitude change? Today, make cost of imported textile into this country. I mean, make it maybe 100%, tariffs on it. How many people can afford the luxury?
Yeah, but what are the alternatives?
The alternatives are simple. Yeah. The alternatives are simple. You see, you cannot have all this result at a go. So you have to look at the short term, the medium term, and the long term. What are you going to do in the shortest time to begin to change the attitude of people? Is pricing of the luxuries. How the luxuries are imported into this country. Change that. Once you change that, people will now begin to say, I cannot afford this. And then it will make the locally produced, item more, you make the local more productive.
Honorable Abanta, I don't know if you agree with, Senator Yusuf, but I'm sure you must also be wondering, I don't know if you are, what statement, if you have heard, you can let us know, what statement on sacrifices that leadership from the presidency, from the leadership of the National Assembly, what sacrifices they intend, and even maybe governors. I don't know if you've heard of any governor saying, oh, my convoy is going to reduce by so-and-so number of cars, or we're going to be using local. I think it's only the Anambra State governor I heard some time back when he was inaugurated that all his cars would be innocent cars.
There is little or no sacrifice, actually. And I'm waiting, and I believe there should be a policy statement, for example, that what executives, government functionaries should do as sacrifices. For example, I agree with Senator that we have no reason to get SUVs outside for government persons when innocent produces that here. Presently, in Abia State, I'm from Abia, Governor Oti, foreign commissioners, he gave them innocent vehicles that same day. He's using innocent vehicles, Oti, and his convoy is lean. They don't have more than 5 vehicles. You can find that out. That is an example of what he is doing. So at the 8th Assembly, we argued what better the floor of the House is that give us official innocent vehicles. It was turned down. I'm also watching what they're going to use now. So how are we producing local productions? Is it banning everything till I don't so agree? We will encourage the use of our own and so on. In fact, they should throw the borders open, they should make it a free market and so on, but encourage our persons, give them tax incentives, give them some order, so we can produce. Innocent vehicles are good. And let me also tell you, in terms of fabric, Nigeria feed our West Coast. If you go to Calabar and all whatnot, you see a lot of wares, footwears, dresses and so on going to the West Coast illegally, not accounted for. So even if you go to London, you see Nigerian wares. Go to Liverpool market, you see Nigerian wares. It's like Wuse market. You see Nigerian fabrics there, going there illegally. You get to Dubai, you see Abba shoes in Dubai. They are rebranded, made in Dubai, and so on and so on. Sometimes you mistakenly remove the first layer, you see proudly Nigeria. So we must be able to encourage local production. We buy more than we get. We are money buying. So we are subsidizing the labor force of other, not just illegal, the labor force of other countries. We must do a radical thing. So I agree with you that government must come out with clear-cut directive of making sacrifice so that people can see and will begin to do that. But playing a total ban on hacking them so much, people will still go there. In Nigeria, once you make a class thing, affluence thing, they'll go more for it.
And regulatory bodies need to also know that the spotlight will be on them, because if you allow substandard products to enter into the country while we're trying to see how we could promote local products, because they have to be of good standards for people to go for it, then you know that you also have more questions to answer. But we'll go to break and then return and continue from Lagos in just a moment. Stay on with us.
don't have the details at this moment. You know, we have marketing wing of our company. They adjust prices depending on the market realities, and this is really what it's about. This is the meaning of making sure that the market regulates itself, so that prices will go up, and sometimes they will come down also. And this is really what we are seeing. In reality, this is how the market works. But there's no supply issue completely. It is not a supply. When you go to the market, you buy the product, you come to the market and sell it at its ongoing, its prevailing market price. Nothing to do with supply. We don't have supply issues. There are a robust supply. We have over 32 days of supply in country. That's not a problem. What I know is that the market forces will regulate the market. Prices will go down sometimes it will go up, but there will be stability of supply. And I'm also assuring Nigerians that this is the best way to go forward, so that we can adjust prices when market goes. I don't have the details this moment, but I know that our marketing wing acts just like every other company in this business. I know that a number of companies have imported petroleum products today, PMS. So many of them are online. I'm sure my colleague will confirm this. So market forces have started to play. People have started having confidence in the market, and the private sector people are now importing products. But there's no way they can recover their costs if they cannot take market reflective costs.
Welcome back. We're still having this conversation on the impact of subsidy removal and the attendant consequences seen in the new pump price of fuel. We still have Senator Yusuf with us and Honorable Nkem Abonta. Let me start with you, Senator Yusuf, following off from Honorable Nkem's view that the review of the palliative, 8,000 Naira palliative by the presidency, speaks to lack of planning. And the view also that they're reviewing it lends credence to this, really. So I wonder how you're weighing in on this. Shouldn't the administration have thought it out, before assumption of office?
Well, thank you very much for this question. My own answer to this is very, very simple. I don't believe in providing, money as palliatives. It will never work. It has been done before in the past. We consume the money, and it has not changed anything. And why should even government be providing the palliatives wholly? What is the private sector doing? What is the private sector doing? What is the social corporate social responsibility of the oil companies, of the banks, of all those that are participating fully in the oil, so in the subsidy? So my own take on this is that government should also involve the private sector in whichever way they can to be part and parcel of the palliatives. You can give palliatives in terms of tax concessions. You can give in all sorts of concessions rather than bringing out money to give household. What will 8,000 Naira do to a household for a month? To do what? People feel their tax minimum today is it 24,000 or 30,000, and you give the people that you give, they are going to use it for what? For transportation. The transportation that is not there, the transportation that is expensive, what are you going to do? So for me, yes, there ought to be a proper planning as to how the palliatives, should be handled, and then what sort of palliatives, and what are the targeted, beneficiaries of the palliatives. Until those things, are done, it will be very, very difficult if we go with this kind of arrangement, just dole out money and think that will solve the problem. It will never solve the problem. It has been done in the past. It has not worked. That is why it has failed now.
Senator Yusuf, I could ask as well, what will the distribution of grains and fertilizers do to farmers? How will it impact on, what Nigerians are going through? The consequences of the removal of fuel subsidy and the increase in the pump price of petrol is immediate. So is it going to cushion the effect of what Nigerians are going through in the immediate?
Well, that goes to, our food production in terms of, fertilizer and what you provide to people. But, there's always gestation, between the impact and then, the outcome. If you say, okay, you're going to provide fertilizer at palliatives, you're going to do, when will the production, materialize? So we got to attack these things immediately and now, so that we can douse the tension of the common man that may or may not come out on the street. Does the labor people sit down with them and say that, labor, this is where we are, you already know where we are, but please, this is the direction in which we go. So involve every stakeholder and bring them to the table so that we all understand. The state governments, the local governments, like I have always said, we should have this cooperative and consultative, federalism. We are not having it. It is not working. So why can't we have it? So until we have all this, we bring everybody to the table to understand the direction, the enormity of the situation that we are in. It will be very, very difficult, to arrest this thing, in the immediate term.
Just before I go to Honorable Nkema, I'd like to follow up on the conversation on the seeming lack of willingness of elected public officials to lead by example by also making sacrifices, as they have called on the electorate, Nigerians, to tighten their belts. It seems like theirs is very loose if you consider that the executive has approved 110 billion naira for infrastructure development, and I believe the purchase of SUVs. Now, if my mathematics doesn't fail me, 110 billion naira is 1/4 of the 500 billion naira supplementary budget that the president has requested for palliative. Give us a bird's eye view, Senator Yusuf. You are also a former member of the National Assembly. What is the justification for 110 billion naira for the National Assembly members? How will it be spent? And can the National Assembly make sacrifices by, reducing that amount such that Nigerians, the poor, can breathe, as the president says?
Well, one important thing we should all realize, the cost of governance, may be very high, so we should find a way of reducing the cost of governance. And the cost of governance, like if we talk about the National Assembly today, where I came out from. I know there are so many areas in terms of infrastructure that are not working well. So is it that, it is not like a personal thing. If it were a personal thing, I would have said, okay, do a sacrifice, cut down, probably the allowances and the salaries to show some sensitivity in the whole thing. But will that work? You are only indicating, but it may not work. Until you attack, like I continue to say, the fundamentals, this thing will not work. The public sector can sacrifice, everybody can sacrifice. You are reducing the money outflow, and what are you going to use the other money for? When the Naira continually depreciates, inflation, is going up. So the value of the goods and services, the value of the money kept on, are reducing, so that even the 200,000 naira today that the labor are asking, they may come with maybe 300 or 400,000 naira a month. So let us agree our attitudes towards, managing the economy. Both the citizens and the government must agree must support one another to make sure that, we all follow the same path and understand the path that we are going. Times are very, very, very hard. They are difficult. Yes, sacrifices must be made. It will not be, business as usual, certainly. So it is on the table of Mr. President to say business is not as usual. What we will do today, we are not going to budget before we plan. We are going to plan immediately. This is what we have. I mean, he has all the experts. He has started his tax reforms. He's doing his own monetary policy reform. I'm sure he will come to civil service and public service reforms. And by the time we all do this, probably in the medium term to long term, we are going to get it better. But immediately, something has to be done in such a way that, the common man will begin to feel the impact of sensitivity of government.
Right. Let me go to Honorable Nkema Bonta, and I'd like to ask with the benefit of, do I say, hindsight, or now that you have a different view, you're outside of government now, to what extent do you think we can really cut down the cost of governance? And I'd like you to put a percentage to it. Yes, you were in the National Assembly, you've been there, so you've seen monies budgeted, how they were used. To what percentage can we actually cut down the cost of governance, both at the executive, legislature, at this point right now? Is there actually anything to cut? Because I think it's important for Nigerians to know the thinking of those in government as well, because a lot of Nigerians clamor for, government, or those in government making sacrifices. But for those in government, do they really believe that sacrifices must be made? And to what percentage, if you can put a percentage to it, Honorable?
Yeah, thank you very much. You see, we believe most times that the expenditure done by National Assembly appears to be the problem. No, let me remind us, the National Assembly is 1/3 of the administrative process in Nigeria. You see, I believe that sacrifice must be made and should be made to the extent that we'll live by example, but not also to depreciate the running ability of the National Assembly. I will tell you, the budget implementation is the problem. Have you gone to the ministries, the MGAs, and so on, and see what they do? You see, if we now unmask what happens there, then you will appreciate that we need to restructure the civil services. We need to do a lot of things to fine-tune them. I'll give you an example. Every year, every in-out, we, like my distinguished senator said here, we budget before we begin to plan. You will look at the books of most MJC, consumer, they will tell you computer this, computer that, and so on. You see one item being repeated severally in different forms, even sister agencies and so on. So it is not proper at all. You see, a lot of wastages and so on, and we really need to block it. So if that also begin to look as if National Assembly, they got 100 billion and so on, what is it for? National Assembly includes the members, the senators, the management, and all whatnot in the system. But we should be able to hold them to give us accountability and so on. But let us hype it. Now, if you look at also the villa itself, it will shock you what goes in there. If you look at the ministerial agencies and so on, a lot of money goes into agencies that don't need it at all. Right. They don't. So we must have a lean, realistic budget in what we're doing. We must cut down what is not necessary. For example, we attack honorable members, the kind of vehicles they use. Have you bothered to see what directors use, what PAMSECs use, what ministers use? It will shock you. You will begin to see that the wastage in that. A minister will go with a pilot vehicle, a backup vehicle, domestic vehicle, health vehicle, and I mean, we must cut down. Right. So leadership
Honorable, you seem to be saying,
example.
You seem to be saying because those in the executive, because they do it, they engage in wastage. Then we can also, or at least those in the National Assembly, also have a license. And I think it's important to properly situate it then. For those who are opposing, the monies budgeted, particularly for the National Assembly. Again, I think everybody should do what is right. So let's speak to the National Assembly. Are you saying that those who are opposing those monies budgeted for the National Assembly, at a time like this, are you saying the opposition is needless?
No, it's not needless, but they should ask for information. They should ask for facts and so on. What was that money meant for? What is it going to use? I'll give you an example. A legislator is supposed to return home every weekend, supposed to travel with one aide and so on. So there should be a cut down. That we should be able to know exactly what is it for. I'm not saying wastage should be supported. I'm not saying extra budgetary water should be agreed. No, they should cut down. They should trim down. But they should be able to say what are the needs. They came out sometime nationally with needs assessment. And this assessment showed a lot of things and so on. Now, for example, flying from Abuja to Lagos or to Calabar or Kano will cost you one way at least 125 or 130,000 naira. If you do that 2 times a week, what will it come to? So we don't know what this fund is being used for actually. We need to ask, the public should ask, can you give us a breakdown of this budget? Can you let us have what it's meant for? But in reality, I agree, there should be a very meager budgetary process. We should live by example. We should trim down. We should do only necessity. Okay. All those things that are not needed should be cut off.
There's a question I need to ask, but just follow up. So can we cut it by up to 50%? Is that possible?
I wouldn't be able to tell you percentage now because I don't know the basis for the money. You see, presidential system is very expensive. Some had argued, let us change, let us change. Can we make it part-time or full-time for members and so on? But so if you say 50%, are you going to cut their functions now by 50%? What is that money for? What was it? Is it a grant? Is it a dash? Is it for the administrative convenience or what? When we know what it is and look at their needs assessment, then we can begin to say this is what we should give them.
And I find it quite curious.
We should be more open. Also, National Assembly should also be open a little bit to let people know what are their functions, what are they supposed to do. Because at times like this, at hard times like this, we need to be very prudent. We need to be very wise.
Right, indeed, Honorable. I find it rather curious that, I mean, the people are the ones championing this conversation about cutting cost of governance. You'd expect that those in governance will come out to say, well, these are the sacrifices we're making, this and this is what we're doing. But just quickly, the question I was going to ask, you were involved with the House of Reps Special Ad Hoc Committee on Fuel Consumption, am I right?
Very well.
Yes, and I recall that at that time your job was to carry out some sort of comparative analysis, essentially from oil depots month on month, year on year, and see if what is on ground matches the subsidy payments that we had across some years. And I'd like to know, did you find any sort of wastage in your investigation? Did you find anything that you want Nigerians to know about what went on during the subsidy regime?
Yes. From our investigation then, we discovered that the figure being branded as daily consumption never tallied. Some said 90, some said 60. In fact, even government agencies had that controversies. We found out, as a matter of fact, that just about half of that figure being quoted was the daily consumption. And in fact, we also found out that our oil got to our neighboring countries. We became big brother Nigeria, subsidized other people. So the amount being paid by a subsidy fee was in fact bogus, unrealistic, not needed. Some were accused of round tripping, some were accused of a lot of things and so on. Some vessels were not even accounted for. So a lot of discrepancies, a lot of misrepresentations all happened. So and I also thought that that report also gave the present administration the boldness to take away the subsidy.
But did you find out, Honorable, pardon me, did you find out those who were responsible then for this corruption, this wastage, those who cheated, let me say Nigerians as a whole? Did you find out who they are? Was that part of your report as well?
I will say yes. I will not be able to say Mr. A or B did it, but it's a corporate thing, it's a cabal thing. Those who are responsible for bringing the fuel and distributing it, were the people responsible. Those who are responsible for the distribution of fuel were the people who did it.
So what did you,
we had no hand in it.
Pardon, so what was your suggestion? What was your recommendation as to what should be done to them? And is that being done in terms of perhaps prosecution? Did you recommend that in your report? I imagine that should have been a part.
No, we couldn't have recommended prosecution. We were fact-finding committee, and the committee did all and presented a report to the House. And I believe the executive will have been seeing the report, and we also agreed that we should tighten up some loopholes, we should tighten up monitoring, we should be more accountable and transparent. Let me also give you a thing. Can you now know that a tanker taking product to some areas is not properly monitored? In advanced climb, they have a way of decoding how many times the driver stopped, where the driver landed at the destination, and all whatnot. Here, it's not same. It's not same. It's a free will thing. It's a cabal thing. And how will you begin to say, prosecute this or that? But of course, there are even some vessels, they'll say missing. Missing. Missing to where? How can a vessel miss? Is vessel a needle? Is it that small?
All right.
That will miss the whole product? I mean, well, it's embarrassing.
Honorable, some will say they already know this. Some will say, I mean, we knew some of these things that you're telling us, and I was hoping that maybe something new that government can latch on to. But let me take this to Senator, because of time. I know you've provided a lot of insight as to your work. But Senator, speaking about this cutting down the cost of governance, it was quite interesting to hear you say that, you know, you are also guilty, you know, wearing something from abroad. But the truth is, a lot of people will still be able to afford importing those things, even if it was double the price. It's an appetite, really. Some see what is made in Nigeria as inferior. But I'd like you to speak to, you know, the talk about purchasing new vehicles for lawmakers, for committees. At a time like this, should we really go ahead with it or find a much cheaper way, which again is being done in other climes, to transport our lawmakers?
Well, even in the past, you know, all these things, you know, have been discussed. But you see, we looked at, you know, the attitude and what was available in the country. But for me, so long as, you know, you want or we want our members of legislature to work, to do their oversighting well, to go to their constituencies, to represent their constituencies well, to participate, you know, in committee meetings, to make their own bills, to make their own, you know, motions and what have you. Yes, you know, they need to run a kind of efficiency in what they do. Certainly, it requires a lot of money to do that. However, that does not mean that other areas cannot be looked into in terms of tightening the oversighting of the agencies. Because where you have an agency probably, you know, spending, you know, much more than it needs, you know, and this, if you tighten the oversighting, certainly, you know, things will come out of that. Also, probably instead of going to the constituencies, you know, maybe, you know, once a month or twice a month, probably, you know, they should find a way of reducing that. And also, the National Assembly itself, you know, the infrastructure, that is what is the issue at this point in time. Just like what my colleague has said, we do not know what is the composition of these monies that they said, you know, they have been allocated to National Assembly or, you know, to other agencies. Until we have, then we will know which area that, you know, this money is going into, is going to be disbursed to. Then we can be able to know, well, if you are taking it to this area, you know, it's going to be wasted. If you are taking it to that area, it is going to be, you know, better. So I believe, you know, this sacrifice, the time for sacrifice has come, and all of us must put our hands on deck to do a lot of sacrifice in the public service.
You know, Senator Yusuf, I'm just wondering, you know, about that transportation point made by Kadi, if it can be reduced significantly, because some legislators are returning legislators, some for the third time, for the fourth time, for the fifth time, and they have perhaps benefited, you know, from the purchase of vehicle allowance provided by the government. But let's leave it there. Let me come to you, Honorable Obunta. The PDP's position this morning that the new pump price of 617 Naira per litre is provocative. And the opposition party, in fact, says that fuel can be sold for as low as 150 Naira per litre. I wonder where it gets that price adjustment as realistic, considering the fact that your candidate ahead of the presidential elections had campaigned on the decision to also remove fuel subsidy if elected into office. So what's the justification for this?
Honestly, I will tell you, I am a canvasser of subsidy removal. I can't imagine the mathematics that will make you sell fuel 150 Naira a litre. That means we will still subsidize it. But I want anybody who is opposing that to come up with statistics to show this is the fuel, this is the cost of production. So what I'm saying is fuel subsidy should go. As to the pump price, I also think that 617 or whatever addition is high. It could annoy because of the situation. We're all feeling the pinch, we're all feeling it. However, let people, including me, come out with statistics to say, government will think this should be, this being so. If the cost of production is 300, therefore don't sell more than 310. If the cost of production is 140, therefore sell 150. We must come with that so that we don't over-labor the thing. We let us channel attention to how do we cushion the aftermath of removal of subsidy, not now fighting of what the thing should be or not. I will also ask government to quickly look for a solution. Come out with how did they arrive at that. My distinguished gave us a mathematics that arrived at 419 just not too long. And you see, because people are not properly informed, people are not carried along, tell us, be open, and let us know how did you get the figures you are putting. Is it because Naira depreciated? That if Naira loses value, you add a value on Naira on the pump price. If it's that reason, then you're punishing the people. But if it's the cost of production you are adding, then we will know, we will bear. Then we'll see how we can cut down. But other things must come to be quickly so that the effect must be reduced.
So
that's what we're trying to see.
So if you agree, if you agree that your party's if you agree that your party's proposal of 150 naira per litre is unrealistic, isn't your party then providing weak opposition to the ruling party rather than constructive opposition, alternative policies, that could move Nigeria forward?
I do not think that saying come to 150 if we've removed subsidy is realistic. I may be able to say that. I should think that PDP or whatever party, include all the parties, should come with realistic statistics to say this is why we are saying this. Or what we're saying is that subsidy should go, but it should have a human face. The removal of subsidy and all what not associating to it should be made in a way that people will not die out of it, that we should live to see the goodness of Nigeria when it is coming. You see, because we lacked political will, because we lacked all what not before, we couldn't do it. I make example. During the glorious, glorious days of Jonathan, fuel was at 160-something. It wasn't even 150. It was 160-something, from 149, 148, or till that or thereabout. So, in my own opinion, we should now look at what are those things that we could do and where were we going to reinvest the subsidy money? Where are we going to put it so that the masses will feel goodness of Nigeria? The masses will be good. That's what should be.
Senator, in conclusion, what would you advise the government to do now?
Well, what I will advise government to do at this point in time is to involve every stakeholder in the equation and listen to areas that are challenging, because it appears to me there is a gap from government understanding, where these issues are and who to control and who not to control, what to control and not what to control. Like I have said, the immediate thing, imagine today you discount the value of our Naira, by 40%. For example, let's say it comes down to about 400 or 3. The subsidy would have, the increase in price of pump price would have been reduced. So we continue to say, I said something about tariffs. I'm not talking about quotas. Foreign exchange, our reserve is very, very fundamental and important. Until we find a way of immediate conservation of our reserves,
all right,
we cannot be able to stop this issue of depreciating value of the Naira, and therefore, increase in pump price. It will continue to go on until the fundamentals are attacked.
Senator Yusuf, member of the 9th Assembly, and Honorable Nkem Uzoma Bonta, member of the 9th House of Reps. We thank you both for coming on today.
Thank you.
We'll be back in just a moment. Stay on with us.